We are now finally going to actually perform matrix multiplication, but before we do so, let's read through the instructions on how to do it. So, to multiply matrices, we use a run and dive method. If the product of two matrices is matrix P, so that is A times B is equal to P, then the value of element Pij uses the elements from row I in matrix A and column J in matrix B. Okay, that sounds very complicated, doesn't it? So let's break down these two things here, which is just showing us how it's going to work. But again, it's probably not going to make much sense until we see an example in practice, but it's still important that we work through these. So I need you to hold on with me. Things will make sense once we get into an example, but let's first look at this. So here it says, let A be this matrix and B be that matrix. Now, A times B will result in a 2 by 2 matrix. Now, how do we know it's going to result in a 2 by 2 matrix? So we saw this previously. If we've got a 2 by 2 matrix here, and we've got a 2 by 2 matrix here, and we're multiplying them together, we know what the order of the product is going to be by taking this and this. It will be a 2 by 2, and that's what it tells us here. It will be a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay, but how do you actually do it now? And that's what we're going to see. Okay, here we've got A times B. So here it is, timesing with this. What do you do? So as we've defined here, we're going to use a run dive method. What on earth does that mean? That means we're going to consider this row with this column to figure out what our first element here is going to be. And that's going to correspond to that. So as you can see, we're running and we're diving. So a run and a dive. That's what we're considering to figure out what our first element here is going to be. And let's see what we're doing. We're going this times this. So this times that, that's that. And then what we're doing, and I'll grab another color here, we're going to go this times this. There it is there. And then what you do is you add them together. And by doing this, you're going to figure out what this first element here is going to be. And that's how we approach this. So if I now was to rub this out and we wanted to figure out what this element is going to be, well, now what we're going to do is consider the same row again. And the reason why we're considering this same row again is because, as you can see, this is our first row, but now we're in our second column. So now we want to consider this column. So we're going this row by this column. So what we're going to do now is the same thing. We're going to go, let me grab the same colors. We're going to go this times this, which gives us this. And then we're going to go this times this, which gives us this. You then add them together and you get that result. So that's what we're doing when we're doing matrix multiplication. And I've added in this sentence here into the notes. I think it would be a good idea for you to write this down. It says, to multiply two matrices, we multiply each row of the first matrix down each column of the second matrix and sum the products, which sounds very confusing, but that is what we are doing. And again, this probably isn't going to make any sense until we see an example, but it's still important that we kind of work through all of this. Let's look at this alternative explanation here, which is exactly the same thing, but maybe it's written in a bit simpler way. So again, we have A and B. We want to figure out what C is, which is the product of A and B. So A times B is equal to C. Okay, how do we do this? So again, what you want to do is you want to consider this row with this column to figure out what the first element is going to be. And as you can see, it's A times E plus B times G. And then we continue. So for instance, if you now wanted to figure out this element right here, well, because now you're in the second row, you'd consider this second row. You're still in the first column, so we're still going to do this, and we're going to go C times E, CE, plus D times G, which is DG. And then we continue. So we want to go to this one here. We would say, well, I'm in the second row, so I'll consider CD, and then I'm in the second column, so FH here. So C times F is CF, D times H is DH, and I'm plussing those together. So as I said, this is kind of tricky the first time you see it, and until we get to an example, it might not make any sense, but hold on, we're now going to go through an example together.